Okay, hello and welcome to this Java Bukkit plugin development tutorial. To some extent this tutorial is going to continue from a previous one, but we're also not going to cover anything, we're also going to be covering entirely new stuff, but if you don't really understand what's going on, it may make sense to watch my previous video, which was on command arguments, because that will explain the basics of this plugin. But essentially it's a banning plugin, or access control is what I called it. There are heaps of these around. You've probably seen or used a few of them, but what they do is provide the kick and the ban command. So in this video, what we're going to be concentrating on is how to store the list of players that are banned between server restarts. So essentially, we're just going to be storing these in a simple text file as a list, and what we're going to be doing is concentrating on the class we're going to make to manage that list. So what I'm going to do first is actually create a new package, which is going to be called util, and it's going to be sort of inside of this package, if you like. So under source, I'm going to go new package, and we're going to call it the exact same thing, except instead of the nothing at the end, it's going to be .util, short for utilities or something along those lines. And inside of here, we're going to put any classes that we need that are things to do with sort of helpers, sort of generic things, I guess. But that'll make more sense as we get on with it. So if you're not sure I'm doing that, don't worry about it too much. Just to separate the code, really, so we have the plugin stuff separate from the stuff that's to do with storing lists. Anyway, let's click finish. And there is a slight problem here, because as you can see, Eclipse has, in its infinite wisdom, decided to put the package both inside of this package and here. So if you just right click on this actual, the root folder, or whatever it's called, hit refresh, that'll fix that. You do need to do that, because if you start editing files in there, it will sort of not save them properly. I don't know why it does that. It's probably a Ubuntu bugginess, but whatever. Anyway, what we're going to do is create a new class inside of our new package. So you can't see me doing this, but I've just gone to right click new class, and we're going to call this class, let's see, list store. Okay, so it's going to be a class all by itself, not going to extend anything. So what we're going to do first is give it a constructor. So we'll create a public method which has the same name, like so, and it's going to take one parameter, which is going to be a file, which is going to be the file that it's going to use to store its data. So that'll need to be imported, like so. And the first thing it's going to do is store that file as a property of this class, which is going to be private. The reason for that is that we need to use it from some other methods, which we're going to create in a moment. So what we're going to do is create a private property, which is going to have the type file, and we'll just call this storage file. So then in here we can just do the simple this storage file equals file, without that K. There we go. And then what we're going to do is create another private property, which is going to be an array list of strings in this case. I suppose this should really be called string store, but it doesn't really matter too much. Sorry, I've called that array, that should be array list. An array list is just simply an array, really. You can think of it in the same way. It's just a list of strings, all in one variable. I'm going to call this values. And that'll need to be imported, as usual. There we go. So we need to create, we need to give this a value. So what we're going to do is just create an empty array list. So we'll do this values equals new array list string, like so. Right, so now that we've got our two properties defined, we'll be able to check to see if the file that we're using actually exists. So what we're going to be doing is passing in an actual file object here. So to check to see if this file object actually exists, we can just do simply if this storage file exists. And if it doesn't, so equals false, we're going to try and create the file. So we'll just do this storage file, create new file, wherever that is. There. And what that will do is create the actual file. It'll just create an empty file. So fairly straightforward. Oops, but yeah, it's not something we massively need to worry about. I'm not sure why we're looking at that folder. Right, so once we've decided that our file has, well, actually what we need to do now is just fix the error. So the reason this is because this might throw an exception and we're not handling that at the moment. So if you just hover over it, you get this option, surround with try and catch. So just do that and it'll add this code for you. Then because we disagree, or I disagree with Eclipse's syntax, we'll just tidy that up ever so slightly. There we go. Right, so now what we've got is an object which, when we create an instance of it, it'll check to see if a certain file exists. If it doesn't, it'll create one. So what we need to do now is create two new methods. One is going to load the list from this file and put it into this. The other one is going to save this into the file. So basically what we're going to do is load it when the plugin enables and save it when it disables. Seems fairly straightforward. So what we'll do is create a new public method this time, which is going to be type void. Wow, there we go. And this is just going to be called load. Not load, not lod, load, like so. Not going to take any parameters. And then we'll do a similar thing, except we'll call the other one save. Okay, so in our load method, what we want to do is read all of the lines from the file and put them into this list. In the save method, what we want to do is loop over every value in this and write it to the file. So we'll do the save method first, because it's a little bit simpler. So what we'll do is just create a for loop. So we'll do for string, because it's a list of strings, and we'll just call this, I don't know, value. And then what we're going to be looping over is this, not clone, this values. And then for every one of these, we want to write to the file. Now, to do that, what we need to do is actually define some stuff before this loop. What we need to define is a file writer, which is just how you write to files in Java. I'm going to call this stream, because it represents the actual file. I'm going to create this, it's going to set this equal to a new file writer, and we're going to pass in the actual storage file, the file object, like so. And this stuff needs to be imported, so let's just do that. Okay, what have I done? I've spelt it wrong, so just change to that, and then we'll import it. Oh, okay, it needs to be surrounded with try and catch again, because it can throw an exception if the file doesn't exist, which is, by the way, why we've created it up here, so that it definitely will exist. And what I'm actually going to do here is move our loop inside of the try block, so that we don't have to worry about it running if there's an exception, if that makes sense. Because say if this here does throw an exception, the rest of the code inside this try block would get stopped, and this block here will run, and then because this just comes next in the code, this will run as well. But there's no point doing that if the file's failed, so we won't bother with that. We'll just put that inside of here. In fact, we're going to do all of our code inside this try block. So once we've got the stream, we need to create a buffered writer using that, and that's what's actually used to write to the file. So we'll define a new variable which is going to have the type buffered writer, and we're just going to call this out, as in output. It's going to be equal to a new buffered writer, and we're going to pass in the stream, like so. Again, I've probably spelt these completely wrong. Oh no, I've spelled this one wrong though. Let's see, change to, perfect. Makes you very lazy, the whole ID thing, but let's not get into that. Right, so now we can actually use these to write to our file by using the methods that the buffered writer provides. So what we can do is simply use out write string, which is that one, although they're all the same, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to write the value. So that's looping over every value in the list, writing each one to the file. However, we're going to write a new line after it as well, because by default it'll just write them end on end on one line, where you always want, well, in this case we want them separated by new lines, so just as a list. So we'll just do out write new line, no, not write new line, just new line, and what that does is just write a new line to the file. Pretty simple. So under our loop, we're then done with writing to the file. So what we're going to do is just close the two streams. So we'll close the output first, because that's on the inside if you like. So we'll just do that, close, then we'll also close the stream. So we'll just do stream close, like so. And that's pretty much that done. So that should then work. We'll be able to save stuff to the file. Can't really test it at the moment because we haven't got a way to load stuff from the file or add things to the list, so it'll be a bit difficult to test really. So what we'll do is just go ahead and code the load method first, and it's going to look somewhat similar, except kind of the reverse, if you like. Okay, so what we're going to do is inside of here we're going to define sort of the opposite of these two things here. So we're going to define a data input stream, which is sort of the equivalent of this, and we're also going to define a buffered reader, which is the sort of the equivalent of the buffered writer. So we'll just do that now. So we'll define a buffered, no we won't, we'll define a data input stream, like so, and we'll call this input, and we'll set this equal to a new data input stream. And inside of here we need to pass in a file input stream, so we'll just create one dynamically or inline or whatever this is called. So new file input stream, and then we pass in the file, so this storage file. And all of this needs to be, well, spelt right for one, and also imported, so that one's right, which is good. And this one is also right, which is good. However, there's an error here, and I believe that's, yep, surrounded with the try catch, because it'll throw an exception if the file is not found. So again, we're going to take the same approach as we did below. We are going to code everything inside of our try and catch block here, or inside of the try block I should say. Anyway, under the input we're going to define a reader, so buffered reader, and we're going to call this reader, and this is going to be equal to a new buffered reader, like so. And then in here we pass in a input stream reader, which again can be created in line, like so, and in there we pass in the input. So again, this is just sort of how to read files with Java. It's nothing too special, nothing too Minecrafty at least, so not that interesting, I guess. Anyway, what we're going to do next is define a couple of variables which we're going to use in our next loop. So we'll just define two strings. One is going to be called line and one is going to be called value. Okay. So then down here what we can do is loop over every line in the file, and the way we do that is by using a while loop, and we do while line is equal to reader read line, like that. We want to keep looping until the result of that line is not null, or is null, sorry. No wait, yeah, while it's not null, so until it is null. So we can do that by just wrapping this in an extra set of brackets and just doing not equals null, like so. And I believe, yep, this throws a different type of exception. So what you can do is either add a catch clause like so. If you do that, you'll get another catch added. However, because we would probably just do this, print the stack trace, we can actually delete this, and we can replace our file not found exception with the general exception, which will catch literally everything that goes wrong. So that's fine, we can do that because we treat them all in the same way anyway. So we'll just catch one exception, just looks a bit neater. Anyway, inside of here, what we're going to do is take the value and make sure it's not already in the list, and if it isn't, we'll add to it. So actually I'm not sure why I defined line, we don't really need that. Actually we do, it's here. Well, whatever. So, we don't need value, that's it. I don't know why we need value, because we're just using the line, but don't worry about that. Right, so what we're going to do is check to see if this array list contains the value, which we can do really simply by doing if this values contains the value, which is none of those, sorry, the line. If it doesn't contain it, so if it equals false, we'll just add to the list, just so we don't get any duplicates, which could cause problems. Well, it would not necessarily be a bit pointless to have them, really. That's all that means. So there you go, that's that done. That's now reading the file into the array list, and just as before, we need to just close our two sort of streams here. So we'll just do reader first, reader close, and also input close. There we go. That is that basically done, and we can also remove that import, which is just unused, which is why we're getting that little warning. So yeah, there we go. Now that we've got our methods to save and load our list, what we could do with doing now is adding the methods to actually manipulate our list, so that we can add things to it, remove things from it, check if things are in it, get all the values of it, that sort of thing. But I think we're going to leave that to the next part because this is getting a little bit too long, really. So thanks for watching, and come back for part 2, where we will actually make this useful instead of just some pointless Java code.